Hello all, happy Thursday. A lot of fun and interesting news to get through today. And, hope everybody's well. Hit that pause. I do that again to make sure the sound is working. So, happy Thursday. Market cap 2.41 trillion, down from 2.6 trillion. The volume is quite high, nearly about $90 billion. And Bitcoin is literally 66,666 a minute ago, a minute before I started this video. And fear and greed is at 70 bucks. Let's figure out, will 66 hold? And look at a whole bunch of other stuff, as well as some miraculous whale activity that just popped onto my radar. So we'll dig in, and not financial advice, of course. And thank you as well to the team on Patreon and by the mods in the chat too. This is Ivy Cutie. I'm a Patreon member and watch daily since November 2021. Love your work. Wow. No, that must have been my very first video, which now doesn't exist. Wow, it's crazy how time flies. Mad. Over 3 years, 3.5 years now doing this. Bitcoin monthly returns. We are in the month of June and it's at 0%. We've gone nowhere. Up and down and all around and then back to square one. And that's part of the theme today, how we've just been bouncing around since March. And let's get into the news. Some fun things are happening and some bad things. This is from Caleb Franson. And this is pretty remarkable. 66.7 today, 2 days ago, 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 3.5 months ago, 3.5 years ago, all at this same price. And I remember in the last cycle, 42,000 was that level in the last cycle where it just kept on being there for a long time. Up and down, it was support, it was resistance, it was all sorts of things. Maybe 66.7 is the new one. And yesterday I spoke about why 66 is very important. Let's get into some more stuff. The interesting left, that 66.7, call it 67,000, is level 7 for this bull run on the Lilo model regarding the layers. And this shows you exactly how many times we've been through it, under it, through it, under it again. The question is, will it hold this time? 66, 67, 65, 6, whatever, just around there. We do need to kind of stay up because it's very important for a number of reasons, which I'll share in a minute. Also, in the adoption news around the world, let's do a quick tour of the world. For everybody down there in Australia, if you're up, by the way, thank you T&D, Tesla, and Sean Donnelly and Kate for coming. Australia's largest bank adds the Bitcoin ETF, and they have access to 17 million customers. So for those Australians down there who aren't putting all their money into real estate, they can now buy some Bitcoin. You know, real estate is very expensive there too, as with many places in the world. Now, the energy companies too, this is breaking news from Bitcoin Magazine. ERCOT recommends that Bitcoin mining be integrated as a controllable load resource to ensure grid reliability. The energy companies and the grids and the utility firms are all beginning to understand the importance of Bitcoin mining. It is not the enemy. It's something that needs to be embraced. And that is a great thing to see. Now, speaking of Bitcoin mining, I think Nayib Bukele and his team, they have actually mined 473 Bitcoin with volcanic resources, clean energy volcanic resources. And now their entire bag is 5,779 Bitcoin. It's hard to believe. They moved to the Bitcoin standard in 2021. So again, 3 years ago. 3 years in, nearly 6,000 Bitcoin. If Bitcoin goes to where some people think it could go, El Salvador could become a very rich nation. Again, it makes sense to have a little bit. And there's many news elements pointing to that too. And Taiwan, the flag did not show, unfortunately, but Taiwan is now in Bitcoin. The Taiwan government have created their crypto industry association under government guidelines. And this is all part of the whole gradually, then suddenly, everybody's in. Find me a place on the planet that isn't. Yes, there are quite a few. Now, this is a fun thing I saw on Twitter today. It's buying Bitcoin today, because we were talking about real estate, is like buying real estate in Manhattan in the 1800s. And Michael Saylor always talks about how those that bought real estate, they'd buy a city block in the 1800s, and they would hold it forever. borrow against it, live against it. This is where we are all over again. So get some. And another fun news. This is from, Saifedean Ammous wrote the book called The Bitcoin Standard. And Congressman Thomas Massie says reading the Bitcoin Standard book inspired him to introduce a bill to end the Federal Reserve. Woohoo! After all the Fed Joe boning and everything else, I think that would be a good thing. They're not really solving the problems that many people need, at least those in Congress. And again, I have no idea if this guy is left or right. I don't care. But it is interesting that now leaders within governments are beginning to understand more and more the importance of Bitcoin, which is why I make videos. So, and speaking of people that hate Bitcoin, Peter Schiff says Bitcoin will crash when Saylor stops buying Bitcoin. Well, we got some news for you. No, you're wrong again, like you've been wrong for 14 years about Bitcoin, and it causes you great pain and anguish inside because 10 years ago you had the chance to spend a couple of $100,000 on Bitcoin. You didn't do it. You said you'd be a very rich man if you did back then, but you didn't. And that kind of regret can fester in the human body and cause people to be very bitter. So anybody, a little bit of advice, if you do have that regret of missing out on something, don't let it fester. Move on. Peter Schiff has a challenge moving on. Anyway, enough oxygen given to him. Now, another Bitcoin news is from Bitcoin Archive, and there's been a lot of rumblings and videos and tweets around the threat of the ruble collapse and the Russian stock market collapse, etc. But Russians are waiting in very long lines at currency exchange points, and they are very worried about collapse in currency values, which is actually happening. I think there's about 200 rubles to the dollar right now, if I'm not mistaken. And the point here from Bitcoin Archive is, you think this can't happen to where you live? It's happening all over the place. This is coming to a bank near you. We saw this happen in March 2023 in California, Silicon Valley Bank. People lining up just like this, trying to get their money out, but the bank was already defunct. Okay? This is why everybody needs that life raft that we speak about. The Russians need it. People in Taiwan need it. People in Australia need it. People in El Salvador need it. Argentina, Brazil. All these places that have just gone in whole hog into it right now. It's a sign of the times. And I thought this was funny because it's Thursday. It's been a long week already. I saw this from Crypto Tony. And he said, would you run naked in a mall for 3 minutes just for 100 Bitcoins? I doubt there's anybody that wouldn't do that, to be honest. I have no problem doing it at all. But let me know if you think that is outrageous. It's not enough Bitcoin. I think as people that probably run for 3 hours in a mall naked for 1 Bitcoin. But anyway, that's just me. Let's get into the Bitcoin charts. So first of all, open interest futures grow by $30 billion since January 2023 from this chart here from Crypto Quant. And the open interest futures growing this much, you know, it visually, it seems that the market is overheated with open positions. But if you convert the open interest to Bitcoin, it will be about 440,000 Bitcoin compared to the peak in October 2022. The top was November 2022, by the way, a month later. That was 614,000 Bitcoin. So the market can still increase this open interest by another 10 billion and not be overheated. But we'll keep a close eye on this. It's very clear that the hedge funds are in the game right now and they are playing. They're buying spot and they are playing with the futures and the carry trade that we've discussed many times. So, and something related to that too is net shorts. They added $1 billion in 7 days too on Bitcoin. And this is why it's all so important. It's like, will that 66K hold? Because if you look at all the kind of hedge fund short pressure, they're really piling up to think, yes, we can push this down further. But this is where it gets interesting because there's more. First of all, adding to the sell pressure are Bitcoin miners. Their selling has accelerated. Some people call this miner capitulation. And yesterday, again, we saw another big chunk of heavy selling. That was a couple of times now so far in a while, but this is the biggest chunk sold since March. And some big mining companies have been selling portion of their reserves. And they are being sold OTC, not in exchanges. So they're going to trading desks that are stacking, whales that are stacking, etc. And again, back to the 66,000 level, again, the new 42,000 level. Why is it critical? Well, this is very important. If you look at Bitcoin miner profitability, when the chart is blue, the miners are being extremely underpaid. And when it is gray, they're being fairly paid. And then the pink and the orange, extremely overpaid or overpaid. The point is right now they're just in the gray zone, which they're being fairly paid. And that fairly paid price is about $65,000 to $66,000. If the price of Bitcoin falls below 65K, the miners will go into the extremely underpaid zone, which means they're going to have to turn off their rigs and they will suffer and bleed. This is just a reality. Hey, Andy in Australia, thank you for coming. But this is why it's going to be so important to stay at that 66K, 65K level for the miners. And counterbalancing all of that negativity is a little bit of positivity. Okay, let's look at some whale numbers. This is breaking news from Vivek. While you are scared, whales just bought $1.3 billion worth of Bitcoin. Wow. Who's selling? That's a big bag. So I went and looked at the Bitcoin rich list to find out what's going on. And I saw this. This is kind of stunning. So we have 3 new wallets. They are wallet number 17, 18, and 19. They are new wallets. They didn't exist a month ago. And they all added 47,229 Bitcoin recently, in the last week or so. 3 of them, all at the same time. And the amount total in these 3 wallets is 141,687. And that is worth nearly $10 billion. So who the heck are these wallets? Could it be part of BlackRock's bag, or could it be part of Saylor's bag? I know Saylor has way more wallets, much smaller in size, more distributed. But that is interesting. Who are these wallets? Could it be a big OTC desk? We're not sure. And Mr. 100 has not purchased any Bitcoin for nearly 25 days. So I keep an eye on that one as well. So I'll try to figure out exactly who these wallets are. But that's a big stack. Between that and that, there is still a lot of appetite for this Bitcoin thing. Now, in other news too, this is what I said yesterday. Minus say 66K is the floor from Mike Alfred. That is the absolute bottom for the rest of 2024, and the miners are the best predictive indicators in the entire ecosystem. The question is, are they going to be right? Because we are perilously close to exactly that level. In fact, as I check right now, 66,732, we've gone up $132 since I began. Now, and let's look, a lot of people are talking about the DXY, the dollar index, and they're saying, oh, the DXY's strong, therefore Bitcoin's going to tank. But let's just throw some reality on it. So I did the correlation coefficient between Bitcoin price and the dollar index since the beginning of the year. If the blue line at the bottom is above the center line, that means they are positively correlated. That means they run together. If it's below the line, they run against each other. Thank you, Moto, for coming. So you can see here, basically half the time it's above the line, half the time it's below the line. We had 3 big areas below the line where Bitcoin price did move in reverse to dollar index. But basically, yeah, you can't really judge that. So is that going to tell you if the DXY spikes, the Bitcoin's going to tank? Right now, so far this year, maybe 58%, 60% of the time it will be correct. But the rest of the time, no. So don't get too hung up on dollar index. Let's talk about Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy. Once again, they have decided to redeem $650 million of 2025 convertible notes and settle all conversion requests in shares. So this becomes dilutive. That's why MicroStrategy is down today. Would have been good to hedge yesterday, but we don't know the stuff is coming till it actually happens. And MicroStrategy will settle the debt into about 1.6 million shares, and that will clear the debt from the books, allowing them to bring on more debt. So it looks like they are churning it now to pick up more Bitcoin before we get the decisive break into all-time highs. These guys know exactly what they're doing, and they know Bitcoin's going higher. And the holders of the original bonds had maxed out on the number of shares they would receive based on the performance clause of the bonds. Therefore, now was the time to swap out. And last time I remember, there was over 20-something million shares. So 1.6 million from 20 million is 4% dilution approximately. Anyway, I'll run those numbers carefully later. This is just breaking news. But there's more. Not only is Michael Saylor paying back debt, but he's also issuing more stock to raise more money to buy more Bitcoin. Okay, this is the infinite money glitch, ladies and gentlemen. He's doing it again. Again, we believe before Bitcoin gets very inaffordable. He wants to do it now. He wants to clear the debt from his balance sheet, issue some more shares, buy some more Bitcoin, which will drive Bitcoin price up. So it could be another one of these whales here we just spoke about. Again, this thing is very finite. And Saylor is the one actually who also coincidentally talked about this, the New York City block. It's like buying a piece of New York City back in the 1800s. So where will this all go? We're not sure. But let's check out the ARB cloud model and check the ARB price as we speak. So this shows you the correlation between MicroStrategy stock price and the relationship with Bitcoin based on their HODL. And you can see we are now under the cloud. Typically when that happens, you buy MicroStrategy. But there is some dilution coming, so we're going to watch this very carefully. And there'll be a time where it'll make sense to swap your Bitcoin into MicroStrategy. And then once you get above the cloud again, you do the opposite. You swap your MicroStrategy into Bitcoin. Wash, rinse, repeat since whatever it began. 2019? No, 2020, August when they first started buying Bitcoin. Time goes so fast. Now let's talk about one other chart. Global liquidity cycle through 2026 from cross-border capital. It shows you the global liquidity index. It runs in 5 to 6 year cycles. We are just entering into the next cycle, which will continue through 2026, ladies and gentlemen. Lots of money is coming, which will float all boats, and it'll help our assets. Okay, so be happy about that. We'll watch this very carefully and see where we are in the cycle. But again, liquidity is coming, ladies and gentlemen, and this pattern is almost picture perfect every 5 to 6 years. We're at the beginning. Bitcoin only players will be here. Let's get into the Bitcoin black hole. Very interesting things with the ETFs too, which we watch. So I was a little bit concerned last week, sensed a few bad things happening. And of course, after 19 positive days, we had 2 days of dumpage. But now we are back to positive, over $100 million after those 2 days of dumpage. One big one from Grayscale, down 121 million on Tuesday. But yesterday was flat, and all the others kept stacking away. That perpetual bid is very apparent when you look at names like BlackRock. BlackRock, positive, 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 positive. Sometimes they have a 0 day, but all the while just positive all the time. This is what the chart looks like for all the numbers again. No big buys, but steady, consistent accumulation across many, and 0 dumpage from Grayscale, which is good news. After the 2 negative days, before that, 19 positive days, 2 negative, we're back to positive. And I'm wondering, is this a trend? Sometimes when negative days happen, they happen 5 times in a row, 6, 7 times in a row, but other times once. So I'm wondering, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think, single negative days, and we had a bunch of multiple positive days, or multiple negative days. So I think we could be back in positive territory, considering the market, and we have to watch the Bitcoin price. That's why I believe there's a good chance we can still stay above 66K. But the miners say it's a lock. I don't know. But we'll see. I think there's a very good chance. Also, in terms of the amount of Bitcoin taken from the system yesterday, 1,477 Bitcoin. That's from the positive inflows into the ETFs. And the day before that was minus 3,000 put into the system, nearly half taken back. So we'd look for another half of that again today, and we'll be back in business. And the most important thing is this: the supply of the coins is gone, but the miners, as I mentioned earlier, are selling at an accelerated pace. So that will help at least the ETFs fill their bags. But the 4 big dumps in a row now is over for Grayscale with a 0 day. They could have a little bit of a negative day today, but we'll monitor that carefully. And there's one more chart here. I thought this was kind of interesting. Now, I always try to put myself in the shoes of other people and try to think what they could do. Well, Warren Buffett, this is bonkers. He controls 3% of US Treasury bonds. Berkshire have nearly $200 billion in cash, nearly 18% of their assets in cash. $200 billion. It's a freaking no-brainer for them to go take half of it, maybe 150 billion of it, buy Bitcoin. Snag it quick. The price of Bitcoin will go up and they'll solve their cash problem, which is a melting ice cube. And guess what? Bitcoin will go up because they bought it all. And it would trigger a huge, huge cascade of buys and crazy institutional FOMO. So, Warren, if you're listening, go buy some Bitcoin and make yourself a hero. You know, you're a smart man. You'll get it. Do the 1,000 hours. Sit with Saylor. Sit with Michael Saylor for an hour. He'll convince you to get rid of $200 billion of melting ice cube and stick it into Bitcoin. All right. With that, everybody, thank you all so much for coming. Appreciate the mods in the chat and the 5,000 people watching live. Let's watch for the 66K level. Let's hope we can stay above it. Maybe have a little pump tonight. And take care of each other. See you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.